And we are live.
We are live.
So, welcome to episode 182 of An American Werewolf in New Jersey. I am the American Werewolf. Here with me today, I've got my returning guest who is here with me from episode 109. So it's been a minute. I've got, 109. At the time that you came on, we were just, I think, Teardrop had just been released. We were inside that first week.
So that's like a year ago.
At least, yeah. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head. I mean, at some point while we're talking, I'll probably, scroll through my YouTube and check out the date.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's been a minute. I've got with me here today, I've got Spyder Dobrofsky.
Hello, all. Thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah, man, always. Thanks for coming on. Spyder is a writer and film director. The last time he was here, his screenplay for the original horror film Teardrop had been picked up by Tubi and put into production, and it's still available on Tubi now. If you haven't caught it, check it out. It's right there. It's free. Tubi's a great channel with tons of great content, but Tubi seems to be expanding and branching into original. I've seen now, now that after I had the... Yo, you still there? Uh-oh. I lost him. He'll be back.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good, man.
Yeah. My
after I talked to you, I started to notice that Tubi is really starting to branch off into a lot of original content and even some series.
Yeah, Tubi is on fire, and they're doing it with the free model too. Like it's pretty amazing, like to have a platform that you can just like literally go on the internet and like go on Tubi and you can just start watching a movie without having the app. And it's and people seem to be like staying on their platform, it's pretty cool.
I'll be honest. I mean, I like it better than some of the streaming channels I'm paying for. I won't mention any names.
Yeah.
But I look at some of these channels and I'll have it because one show is on there. Okay, I have to watch it because, this one show. But then you look at the rest of it and you're like, oh, I could save my $5,
It's all about the taste in the library too, because some platforms, I'll just look at their overall curation of films that they feel are their the great library they bought. And I'm like, that's just not my cup of tea. And then some other platform just has Kubrick's films and all these things, and I'm like, wow, this is a platform that I can actually go through their library. And then another platform has all the Sundance dramas from the last 15 years, and I'm like, that's not going to be me. I'm not. So it's kind of funny how each platform kind of caters to a certain taste. Comes down to their general libraries, and I'm always curious about that. And I think over time people are like, well, I don't need that. Right.
Yeah.
That one and this one, and I want this one and that one, and not this one. And then, my dad has two weird ones. I'm like, Dad, what do you have that for? I love that show. And you're like, all right,
that's why there are definitely streaming channels that I lean more heavily towards. A lot of Hulu. You'll catch me on there, or some HBO Max, or that kind of stuff.
HBO Max or whatever, they have for whatever reason, someone over there got all of my favorite films. It was Seven, Solaris, Dark Knight. I was like, wow, this person just knew what I wanted to watch.
Yeah, they've got all the Genndy Tartakovsky animated stuff too. They've got Primal, they've got Samurai Jack.
Dude, I love that stuff. I actually just started Primal. Is that a newer show? Because boy, that's good.
2019, and the second season is last year, 2022. We just covered both seasons on the channel. Some of the finest stuff you've ever seen. Amazing what you can do without dialogue.
There you go. Yeah, I the first few, I watched the one up until that Woolly Mammoth one or whatever.
Okay.
I'd never seen his show. I didn't really know his name, the film, the filmmaker, and then realized that he's the Samurai Jack guy, right?
Yeah.
But it's so interesting to me because he's a true filmmaker in the animated world, almost like Miyazaki. You know, it's like a lot of times I just think about animation and I think about it as very conventional, traditional. But then you see these guys who are like, you know, it's like their approach is just so stylistic and creative and innovative, and they're like, oh wow, like this guy is making stuff that I want to watch.
Yeah.
And it almost transcends being animated. It's just like storytelling, and it's
art.
Yeah, it's just art using animation, and then you know you watch a couple of those filmmakers, and then you're like, oh my gosh, animation is sick. And I think that's where me personally, I thought animation almost gets a bad rap from people's expectations of it just being like, oh, it's just animated because whatever, you know, it's just drawn, but it's not like people know. People have a vision for it, some of them, and they're making storytelling work in that medium because they can tell a tale of a caveman and a dinosaur and this weird kind of like friendship thing that develops sort of out of survival and need. It's like, you can't do that live action. It'd be so stupid, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you've almost got a Burroughs type feel in that first season.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from the Tarzan original content. But then when you get to the second season, and I'm not going to give you any spoilers, we almost start to move into Robert E. Howard territory.
Oh wow!
You know, old school Conan. Like it's got a different feel to it. He's not just making the same episode time after time again. And if you ever get a chance, before Filoni got to it, he actually did 2 seasons of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and they are just fucking 2D animation that is just off the fucking hook, man.
Oh, look at that! You're saying that he did some of that right there?
Yeah, before Filoni, it's unrelated to what Filoni did. He made another type of Clone Wars, but this was, I think, from Cartoon Network or something like that. And like one season is only a little over an hour. They're like these little 5-minute vignettes, but they're just fucking gorgeous to watch. You're like, the minute, like within a minute, you know, you're onto something. You're like, fuck, man, this is really fucking good.
You know, and that's kind of my place. That if I feel like if Star Wars continues on, right? I was a big fan of Star Wars, and
Sure.
not the new, like once the new trilogy started, I mean, and I went to that first movie, the
Force Awakens. Yeah,
I went there with like all of the hopes in the world, right? Like Star Wars changed my life as a kid. I went, like, I literally, all I talked about when I was like 10 or 11 was like Han Solo, Frozen, and Carbonite, just all day. And then I love the prequels, but there was something about the whole, again, and you'll go online and you'll find people who are like, George Lucas ruined Star Wars. But for me, there's something about George Lucas's mythological, the way he looks at the mythology, that I think when you get rid of him, it goes into this other tone that while they maybe have mastered the comedy or the acting or something better in the new ones, it misses out on the like folklore that I just think is what made me really a fan of it. And it was like, I didn't really go to Star Wars films for like these hilarious sequences or these really like epic action sequences either. To be honest, it was more like the mythology and Yoda and him being his mentor and having this wisdom and then getting killed. And then his wisdom helps this guy later. And it was like this incredible, incredible folklore and mythology. And I just think that stuff got lost. And without it, I just found myself watching these movies just very okay, like, yeah, sure, the CGI is better. The action scenes are, the lightsabers look better. But you know what? I just don't care. I don't mind the pod racing is starting to feel like a masterpiece compared to these new ones.
If you take away the spectacle, you have to have something else.
Yeah.
There, in your foundation, and if all you have are Star Destroyers and lightsabers, and that's why I don't know if you caught it. I really enjoyed Andor.
I got it. I saw you post that, and I got to see it because I had a good friend who's like, I know you've been disappointed with Star Wars. Like, this is what you've been waiting for. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there's no spectacle. It's just straight storytelling. It's acting.
Yep.
I mean, you're just invested in these characters. You get to see like the inner workings of the Empire, like the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you're like, wow. Like, why the fuck aren't they doing more of this? we're coming up on at the end of the year with Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon.
Yeah.
That was a Star Wars pitch. He had this idea for a hard R-rated Kurosawa-style Star Wars story with no no overlap with any of the old characters. Completely organic and original characters, and Disney shot him down.
So is Rebel Moon now not Star Wars related?
No, it's not. It is just an original. It's just he's just same thing, but it's not related to the Empire. He's had to change some names around, but he never used any Skywalkers or Solos or no R2-D2 or no Darth Vader or there's just these people like a Seven Samurai, I think, kind of situation that are defending this one planet.
Yeah, that to me, that's where I think that if there would be like the only thing that would get me to go see a Star Wars movie now, like a reboot, would be a true filmmaker coming on and being like, I'm putting my stamp on this. It's not going to be the Disney stamp. It's not going to be, because the Star Wars brand at large is not the same Star Wars brand that it used to be. It's been incorporated now with all of this other stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think when now general audiences think of Star Wars, like they think about the this new era of it, and I would rather see like a psychological exploration of like Darth Maul. Seriously, I would watch that movie if it was like a Darren Aronofsky Darth Maul film.
Yeah.
And it's like this guy living in the like a hole after he gets killed, and like figuring out why he was so evil and what happened to him, and he was like abused, and like I don't know. I would watch a film like that, and then and not just these kind of like it's just the same thing about a new Death Star, a new villain over and over.
It's a retread. Yeah, first you had a Death Star, now you have a really big Death Star. And you're just like, what the fuck, man? I saw this movie already 40 years ago.
And it's funny, you make the Death Star bigger in a way it actually works, There's something about...
It's so bad.
I actually feel, too, and I've tried to do this in my own movies, but I feel like when you start treating... start killing off people to make someone evil or the stakes higher, there's something more powerful about a villain who kills less people and kills characters that you're more intimately involved with, so that there's feelings involved. So it's like this new brand where like there's such like the whole cities are destroyed in movies now, but at the end of the day you're killing off all these extra buildings, and it's like people don't care. But if you just killed off this person that people really liked and got to know and understood, then all of a sudden you're like, man, I'm looking for this redemption. I'm looking for my hero to get real revenge, instead of like just blowing up everything. And then you're like, oh, he's just a mass destroyer of planets and things. And it's like, but I didn't meet anyone on these planets, and so I don't feel anything. I just feel like I'm watching, CGI buildings exploding, not with people's lives in them. And so it's like there's something about, I think, more intimate stories that have less characters, less people, in which the consequences of a bad guy actually hurt the core people we're watching, not the world at large.
We had talked about this a little bit more, and then, just going back as a quick, make sure you watch Andor. I think that'll give you a lot of what you're looking for. But we had talked about this before when we were talking about Teardrop.
Yeah.
And that smaller production companies, production houses allow you to take more risks.
Way more risk. Yep.
Even like we talked about, in Teardrop with the, like the teenage sex trope.
Yeah,
you could never get away with that with like, WB or Disney and so you can see the benefits of, go ahead.
I know I was going to say you nailed it too. And I was so pleasantly surprised because I wrote that stuff and I'm like, look, I grew up watching American Pie where, some guy fucking beats off in an apple pie, right? And that's funny. You know why it's funny? It's not hurting anyone, this and that, but it's just a fucking horny teenager who's like, I can't get a chick, but I'm going to fucking try this apple pie thing because my friend said it. Right? And it's like, okay, so when I'm writing my horror scripts, my spec scripts, and I'm going to write some teenage sex stuff, I'm not going to water it down to stuff where it's like shit that people don't say and shit that's not really very funny.
Right.
And so you do that and you write these things like, gosh, this is pretty vulgar, but it's actually kind of more accurate. Yeah. And then when a filmmaker and a production house actually stay faithful to it, and they stay faithful to the exact back and forth, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is really working and this is really funny. And then you're watching it in a scheme of movie. It's like, look, it's an R-rated movie. Like, if you were 13 years old, you shouldn't be watching this movie.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're gonna watch it as a 13-year-old, you're gonna get in trouble, but you're gonna watch and stuff, right? And it's like that's
what parents are. That's what parents are for.
Yeah, I don't want to watch an R-rated film that's really not that R-rated. That's kind of the reality is. So I love that they kept the script like literally 97%, and they were willing to take the risks. And you know, the people who've watched that film and wrote to me, and I've seen like everyone really appreciated the actual crude humor and the crude type of stuff that I thought, it's like, look, we got these high school kids hanging around on a field trip and they're bored, and they're going to find a way to get hammered, to get high, and to and talk about, you know, sex.
Possibly paw on each other a little bit if they can get away with it, you know, for 30 seconds or something like that. You know,
they didn't cut it though. That's why I love you saw that, and I'm like, I was so happy they didn't cut that stuff, because I knew that when they bought it, they liked it. Yeah. And that made people laugh when they were reading it. And so I sometimes think that a lot of these spec scripts are sold with all this great stuff, and then people get afraid, and then they cut it. And the result is you see these scenes in films, and you're like, ugh, boring, right? And all of a sudden you have these characters, these teens or whatever, and they're just talking like, it's like you have teenage characters, and they're like so mature or like so philosophical. Or they're like they're so drug addicty, you know. You have characters that are like, I'm like, dude, a teenage kid who's 16-year-old is like popping pills all the time. It's like, this kid ain't gonna be in this world. Like, it's just there's like this no in between where it's just more honest, more truthful.
It's not authentic. It's not authentic. It's bullshit.
So they'll go in the one way or other to make it so heightened and over the top that you're like, oh, this is that like Xanax addicted teenager who's in a comedy, and it's like, you know, it's like it doesn't even make any sense, and it's kind of comes from something like, I know you're seeing it like that I feel like is manufactured in post-production.
Yeah, and it's you know, I mean, they're insufferable for all the wrong reasons. Yeah. You know, they're insufferable for all the wrong fucking reasons. Yeah, you know, like a buddy of mine, we just got through going through HBO's The Wire again.
Yeah. Oh, I heard. Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, every fucking line is just popping, you know, from every fucking character, and it's just, you know, you hate the people that you hate for the right reasons. You know, it's not over the top. It's so fucking subtle and just.
You're supposed to hate, and I kind of think that that's missing, where it's like, and I don't mean hate where you're like, I don't want to watch this film, and like this character, I'm like, I'm interested, I'm fascinated, but I know that this story is not telling me that I'm supposed to be like, oh, this guy is morally great. It's like, this guy's a fucking asshole, but boy, he's an interesting asshole to watch.
Yeah, and it's a great fucking performance, because he's convinced that he or she is convincing you that they are that person. You know, you almost forget that, you know, this is just a fucking performance. I remember a friend of mine told me that about Vincent Cassel. I was like, I can't stand that fucking guy. She's like, what do you? He's an actor. He's out there with you. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, he always plays a jerk, you know? And he's like, that means he's doing his job. And I was like, oh shit.
He plays
okay. I like Vincent Cassel now. And every time I see him, I'm like, okay, that guy is, you know, he goes for it, you know, like every time. He always plays the French jerk.
He was in Black Swan as the guy who was like basically like trying to sleep with all the chicks, the ballerinas, who was like he's such a jerk. But you know what? He's an interesting jerk to watch.
Yeah, and I remember him from the Ocean's movies.
Yeah, the Ocean's movies. But no, you're nailing it, and that's, to me, is like, I think that's, you know, we talk a lot about on your show, but we talk about like I think that's the writer's job to like not be worried. I sometimes hear things like, I need to like make sure that the audience relates to this character, and it's like, why? This character doesn't need to be relatable in that way. We can all relate to someone like, all right, I know who that guy is. He's not someone that I relate to emotionally, but I know who that jerk guy is, or that bully guy is. Like, just, you know, it's like Stifler in American Pie. Like, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What makes him relatable isn't because I'm like, oh, I have so much in common with Steven Stifler. It's like,
No.
what makes him relatable is you're like, all right, we all know that really obnoxious guy in school who's like a total prick and somehow still getting girls, and you're this and you're that, and you're like, what has anyone seen this guy? And there's nothing. And just like, God, he's a great character to see kind of stop the main core of crew in that film from like having their high school experience. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. You're good, bro.
Where are you? I mean, you're a student of the game, clearly. Behind the camera, but also, in terms of watching and building your own, references from the things that you see. Where are you seeing the good stuff today? Just like what you're seeing. I mean, there's no wrong answer, but I mean, where are you getting? Because I just got finished with a show that fucking knocked me on my fucking ass. The Bear.
Oh, I heard The Bears. My folks.
Oh my God. Yeah. If you get a chance.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch that. I don't know, because I always say too, like when I'm in production on something or even in pre-pro, I kind of tend to not watch that much new content. I always talk about this, but I kind of like to go into my little like bubble of films that I already know I love, where I'll just be every other week watching Seven, Zodiac, Solaris, Eyes Wide Shut, Shining, Fountain.
Oh Jesus, you're going down the fucking. That's a dark rabbit hole, man.
Yeah, but you know what? Some people watch the dark films. I kind of, when I'm in this space, watch them for just like, like why I like that film now. I realize is that the sound design is like not showing you what this is you're hearing, and you're just hearing it from this. I start seeing those kind of things. So I almost don't watch it from a audience member, but more from like, look at what they're doing filmmaking wise. Look at what look what production design did. And I'm like, I never would have thought about, just those kind of things. And then I'll kind of try to find behind the scenes footages of those films, like just Shining, and see that like some of the best creative choices in my favorite films were from an accident, were from something not working. And I guess I just kind of get into that zone.
Okay.
And when I watch new content, I feel that it's such a hit or miss, because I don't want to watch something bad, because I'm afraid that it'll like somehow leak into my subconscious or whatever.
Take you out of your space.
That being said, I did start watching the Arnold documentary a few nights ago. Super inspiring and super interesting. Just for it's like the first chapter is about him bodybuilding, then breaking in as an actor, and then the last chapter is him as governor. But the inspirational tales, something like that, and like the Last Dance, the Michael Jordan. I kind of sometimes like watching these kind of things because they're just like about climbing mountains. And what I've learned with every single project is there's always interesting mountain peaks to climb. Right. And it doesn't necessarily mean like there's a challenge, but there's a creative challenge. So like I write this scene on the page. I'm like, this scene works so well. And then you try to do it in reality. And it's like, why isn't this working? And you're like, I know this scene is supposed to work, but it's not working like it did in my head. And then you have to like look at the moment, look at the location in front of you, look at the actors in front of you, and be like, oh, it's not working because this, and what we really need to do is do this. And it's finding those massive epiphanies in huge problems of not necessarily being able to translate what's on the page to reality. And I think some filmmakers, and again, I'm a young filmmaker still, learning and growing, and I try to learn from every day of shooting and every movie I watch. But I think sometimes people force things that aren't working, even though they worked on the page. And the result is something that feels very sterile or empty, even though the script might have been really good, because not everything that works on the page can translate exactly how you would think it would translate.
Sure.
And that can be all sorts of different things, just from like lighting, blocking, or like simply something like, oh, this scene had a big crowd of people, right? And then when you're doing it, you're like, this giant crowd and this character, it kind of feels like this person's talking to too many people and we're losing what that person's saying. So what if you put it in a smaller venue, more intimate crowds that were actually, the characters were getting to know more, So anyways, lots of things like that to overcome. But on the other side of it, there's such like, I can't imagine the scene without that stuff. So I like the behind the scenes of like The Shining and all these films and The Fountain, because it shows you these processes that Kubrick and these guys went through live. And you see the film and you're like, wow, well, they found a way to make it work.
Okay. So, you're constantly picking the reference points.
Yeah.
Those sorts.
I do. Yeah. I like that part of the process. I think I now realize is finding references, but then not being like super faithful to them, but more like internally inspired by them.
As a useful guide.
Yeah, useful guide. Like for anyone who's writing, it's like, having a useful guide and then being like, okay, having the courage and the balls to be like, now I got to let this guide go because that's his film.
Right. Yeah, you've got to do your thing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the same thing.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's talk about. Huh? What?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I was listening.
No, let's talk about where you're at right now. You have a new movie that you're working on where you're actually in the director's chair. So you've gone from screenwriting now to film direction, and you've got a new psychological horror film. Is that correct? Called Down Below.
Yep.
Okay, so I mean, keeping in step with what we were just talking about with The Shining and No Eyes Wide Shut and Solaris, all these types of things. You've got a new movie that's in the works right now, in production, Down Below. And you scored the mighty Eric Roberts.
I scored.
Yeah, man.
He's a legend, and I say it, because I've directed my share of just short films over the years, and my brother and I did like a black and white, no budget, 51-minute feature like 4 years ago or whatever. But this guy was like the sweetest guy, and honestly, I learned so much having an opportunity to work with him and collaborate with him and just soak in all of the choices he made on the writing, and it was like I remember going to see this Q&A of The Judge. It was a Robert Downey Jr. film from like maybe 8 years ago.
Okay.
The director of Wedding Crashers, it was like his first drama, and they both spoke after, and someone in the crowd asked, they're like, how do you direct Robert Downey Jr., such a good actor, this, that thing? And he said, sometimes the best move is to just take a step back and let someone, when they're doing something great, just do their thing. If someone's just bringing such a richness to a character, why would I interfere with that? And so I got a real chance to just see a veteran and a pro and a legend soak up the material. We spoke about it, and then a lot of it was just like, I'm in awe behind the monitor. I'm like, man, this is just so good, and that's part of the just one of the beautiful parts of the process and one of the greatest film days of my life.
Well, take us through it. How did you?
Sure.
I mean, clarify this for me. Yeah. Are you the screenwriter for this film?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yes, writer director of this film, exactly. So it was a project that I wrote a while ago, but I'll tell you, like, I think I spoke to you about this, that I'm always doing like spring cleaning. So I'm always taking projects that I write and like rewriting them and reformulating them and kind of like mining them, because some projects you like can't shake because there's something special about it, yet you haven't really fully executed it. And so I'm going to take you outside, by the way.
Yeah.
That's such a nice day out here.
It's all good.
And, we're on the move. But yeah, it was one of those things where I wrote the script like a long time ago, and I found that I couldn't shake it, but that the story needed a lot of work. And that's one of those things where I feel like you just, you keep chiming at it, working it away, and then eventually the story reveals itself to you. And so it was just finally I recognized what this project was, rewrote it, found the core, even though all those ingredients were still there from like draft one that I wrote like maybe 2 years ago, but finding that core element. And then once I nailed the script, it just like the whole film came together really fast and just everyone that I got the project to just kind of signed on based on the material. And like, you know what I mean? When you just write one of those good scripts and the scenes just sing, and it's like, it does all the pitching for me. So I don't need to pitch anyone. I'm just like, read.
Nice.
They read. I get it. I get a call the next day. I'm in. When do we shoot? And it just can be that simple, you know?
So wait, okay. So you, constantly sort of hack away at this till you get to, I guess, what you would call the truth of it, the truth of the story, and then you present it and say, this is the work. At which point people recognize it and say, yes, this is the right thing. But how do you go from there to Eric Roberts?
You're saying, oh yeah. Just basically, I've got a manager and some producers on this film, and they just got it into his hands and his team, and he just reacted to the material, and it was like
Very
nice. I said, it was just that simple.
Very nice.
And I say a thing because I've also been on the other end of like having scripts, and like for the life of me, you just can't get people to sign on, and it's not what I learned is it's not. You can write a really great script, but going to the wrong actor who's just not right for the part won't create that explosion. But it was just the right role at the right time that Eric connected to and wanted to do. Versus there might be another script that I have that was like, I could go to this actor and be like, oh, this person, and so perfect. But they're like, I just did something like this last year. So it's not the quality of your material, but maybe the timing of when you go to some person, of them wanting to do something fresh and new. And that was my thing. It was like, it was just something that was really, really out there and wild and fresh and dramatic. And I think that Eric and his team just kind of connected on that element. And so it was almost like, oh, there was just an explosion of creativity. And then, when we met and we shot, he was just tapped in because it was like an entirely new character with a really, it's a crazy couple of sequences we shot. I'm really excited to share the stuff. I sometimes I'm like, oh man, I have to finish, the edit and everything to even begin to share it, and everything in context too, because there's a whole film, a backstory, a Christmas Eve. We have this big giant mystery horror tale on Christmas Eve, and so everything has to work. It's all these moving parts, even the smallest parts, even the way I look at, like, even my extras with one line have to be on the money. They have to be perfect. I don't want any single moment that's just cheap or fake or untruthful or just sterile. So it's a massive endeavor, but it's been one of the great experiences for me as an artist. And also I feel that all my years as a writer have really helped me because I'm not as attached to my own words as people would think, because I've seen what it takes to cut something and get something better. And that's one of the things I feel I've learned a lot as a writer, is actually not dying, not being afraid to kill your darlings,
You're talking about quality control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly. And things where I'm like, hey, just because I wrote this precious line and I'm seeing it on the set here and it's just not working, cut it.
Yeah.
But that was the line that was supposed to be my one-liner. Cut it. It's not working.
Right.
And that's where I try to, when I come in as a director, be like, okay, I'm not the writer anymore. Is this writer's script working for me? And to really separate those two. Because if you come in as a writer, you're like, but all this stuff was so perfect on the page. And it's like, but we're now.
You could understand why people would feel that way if they, were solely the writer. You're like, my fucking work, this sort of thing. But I guess, ego gets attached, and, people's feelings and, this, that, and the other. And that's not necessarily useful, maybe even counterproductive.
Yeah. And you nailed it. And we're human beings with egos, and we're human beings with tastes and things that we want to see. But I think I've just been lucky enough to have a couple of projects that went from a screenplay to a finished film, and to see some of those things that I fought for, some of the things that I was like, this needs to be on film, that I was like, that didn't actually work that well, And I was fighting for it because it worked on the page, but seeing it on film And then some areas were like, hey, this director said I need to do this and make this change. And he was right. And so I don't know. I feel like you need a strong ego enough, a healthy ego to make sure that you fight for your vision. You fight for what you believe and what you think this film needs to be, but also to have enough of like an ego check to be like, hey, not everything that comes out of my mouth is that great, and not every single line is going to be quoted and become the next Pulp Fiction. So what's happening on set might be better, and to let someone collaborate and bring an idea to the table that isn't yours, and to actually take that idea in is your ticket,
I hear that all the time, when you hear actors and things like that, talk, they talk about the willingness to listen.
Yeah.
You have to still, keep your, be open-minded. Yours is not necessarily the only way. So it sounds like you're on the path with that.
Well, yeah, I try to be, man. I have my days where I'm like, this has to be this, has to be that. And then there's just, clarity that comes with, I think, doing more shoots and scenes and just seeing like, hey, adapting as you go and finding the right collaborators too, who push me and tell me, like, Spyder, fight for that, or don't, or you're pushing something that's not making any sense, or it just doesn't translate that well. And so I think that's the other thing, is having a really great soundboard and team of people that you trust. But also not too many, right?
Right. Yeah, you keep it to a reasonable number of people that you trust, and
you have
proceed from there.
Yeah, you have to, because I also know writers who give their materials out to every single person they ever met, and they have so much conflicting advice that they just like get overwhelmed by it and then abandon ship, because it's like, this person said this and this person said that, and this assistant, who's the assistant of Christian Bale, said this movie will only work if this, but I don't, too many voices.
Yeah, too many hands on the steering wheel.
Yeah, and I mean, what we were talking about earlier, it's like that's the killer of many movies, is too many hands on the steering wheel instead of one director with a vision.
Yeah. And we hear this in some of the big production houses that, you look at some of these Marvel movies, and there are several directors. There may be one director, but there's another director who takes care of all the action sequences.
Yeah.
Or, this or that. And you're like, fuck, that's got to be complicated.
Yeah. No, and I mean, we're in a very interesting time for film, especially with theaters and Marvel. And, but I still think at the end of the day that people want a really innovative story. They want something fresh, unpredictable. I look at myself. I really try to look at myself as an audience, and so many movies I go into, it's like in the first 5 minutes, I know exactly what the movie is about. I know exactly where it's going to go. I know exactly what this character's problem is. It's going to be resolved. Oh, this person's an alcoholic, and by the end of this horror movie, they're going to be so right. It's
formulaic.
So formulaic. And for someone like me, that I can't, and my brain figures it out in 5 seconds, and I'm like, and now I'm just watching and waiting for the slash, waiting for the jump scare, waiting for that, and waiting for me to feel like the $19 I spent on a ticket is worth it.
Now you're mad. You're like, fuck, I want my money back, man.
Or like, damn, I could have gone to sushi. I could have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's the thing that I'm trying to make sure I avoid. And again, it's like finding that balance where you don't want to be totally confusing, because there's some films that go like just too out there. But then there's the films that go, it's too conventional. And I think there's that nice, healthy middle ground. When I watch some of those films that I was talking to you about, and I think about my first watches with them, it was like, I had no idea where Seven was going when the film started out. Right. You know what I mean? It just doesn't go down this the cliche detective and this and that. It like
or Zodiac,
same, right?
Where the fuck is this going? And you're just like,
but
then he ends up in the hardware store, which was like the last thing I expect. That creeped me the fuck out when he walked into the hardware store at the end.
Oh, and when he goes to that guy's house, the poster drawer, and then he learns that he drew the poster. And some of the most tense scenes had nothing to do with the Zodiac killer, and it was like.
Yeah, wow. People are doing nothing and making it look interesting.
Whatever that is, I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to always figure out why I, as an audience member, have such a damn good time, and I'm at the edge of my seat, and I'm, oh my God, and why when people try to make something that's really scary, it just doesn't work on me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's some sort of minimalism. I mean, I have,
Minimalism, yeah.
yeah, but I mean, like it's Jake Gyllenhaal staring at that guy in the hardware store.
Oh,
Like they're not doing anything, but you're like, what the fuck, that guy's face just changes a little bit. He's not the boogeyman, he's just some guy, but
no, such a haunting scene you're talking about. And same with like Seven, like you never see any of John Doe's murders. It's only the aftermath, but he does such horrible things to these people that you start to imagine what kind of monster he could be, so that you meet him and you're like, this is it? This is the guy?
Yeah, some fucking nerd, which is, if you watch those serial killer documentaries, they always look like somebody's nerdy uncle. It's like some guy you would pass by without even looking at.
And that is what I think, I don't know. And so I think what we're both interested in, what we're talking about, is a story that is willing to take you down a path that you've never gone to, and yet still getting across its ideas, right?
Yeah.
But not taking you down. Here's the detective looking at himself in the mirror in the first frame, popping pills. That, right? No, yeah. I've seen it in almost every film that continues to come out. Stop. If I see a movie that opens up in a mirror or an alarm clock going off, I'm out.
And I got tickets to the wrong movie. Can I go see the the other movie? Wrong one. Sorry.
By the way, my first holiday movie I ever wrote opened on an alarm going off, so I am guilty of it. Okay. And when I watched that part, I was like, "Oh, why did I do that?" And you think that you can transcend what's happening, but it's just an alarm clock going off. It's
like, okay.
Yeah, it's so it's, I'm gonna make sure I lose you over here. Are you moving there? Did I lose you? Did I lose you there, brother? Oh, there. I'm in 3 locations today. Did I lose you there? Am I being cut out?
Yo, you there?
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
That's probably me. I'm trying to find my Wi-Fi spot.
No, I think that was on my end. This damn internet companies.
Okay.
But yeah, where were we? So, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear you great.
Okay, so let's can you give us a little bit of a summary, like a synopsis of what the film is about down below?
Yeah, without giving much away, because I really what I'm really trying to do is avoid what I think movies are doing, which is like making trailers and giving away all the good stuff.
It's so fucking annoying.
It's so annoying, but the larger premise is kind of this interwoven tale of this like young police sheriff, a prostitute, and this kind of criminal suspect, and all 3 of them on Christmas Eve are somehow interlinked by this haunting that starts to follow them all. Okay. It's all takes place on from Christmas Eve to Christmas morning, and it's kind of this very scary exploration of these 3 kind of troubled characters who all kind of have their own secrets, and why this haunting is following them 3 and why they're kind of been chosen. Okay. And that's about all I want to say, because I think it'll take you to the depths, and I'm really excited about Sharon Stone. I mean, I that's the hardest problem is I'm like, I can't say nothing. I can't release trailers.
No, it's fine. And I completely understand. Now, we had talked about this a little bit before, because I don't want to keep you too long.
Yeah.
We had talked about this a little bit before.
Yes.
With everything sort of being jammed up right now.
Yeah.
Do you have, what are you looking at in terms of a release date? Sometime next year, I imagine?
Yeah, we're looking at potentially, still, I think we're still on track to potentially release this kind of holiday season would be the idea.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, of course.
I want to release it on the holiday, but we also have the film festivals, our distribution, these kind of things, and just to also measure out the where the industry is, where the world is, I think that there's an element of patience that sometimes has to be had. And I'm not the most patient person, but making sure that your movie is released in the right time, in what it is. It's a very chilling horror film on Christmas. So I feel that I would want to watch a movie like that around the holiday time. It just seems like the thing. So, and versus seeing it in the summer where it's like, it's kind of it's a
July,
wintry.
it's not the same thing. Yeah.
No, and it's a wintry kind of feeling. And, I just look at myself as an audience member and ask myself, like, I always feel like horror films play better in the colder part of the year. And maybe that's just like subconscious or whatever, but I really do feel that going to watch a horror film on a hot summer day just doesn't have the same thing as watching like a summer comedy,
Yeah. Or some sort of blockbuster action is what the summer's for. That kind of this Mission Impossible thing. That's what it's about. Oppenheimer. That's what it's about.
Perfect
that
film.
Sort of thing. Yeah,
and that's why those films are just chosen to release in July when they were shot like 2 years ago. So that's kind of the track we're on. I know there's the strike, and we still have a little bit of the film left to shoot. A lot of stuff though is like edit. We're working on an edit and things during this time. The writer's strike that hasn't affected us because we're in production already, but the SAG strike has commenced as of last night.
Yesterday, something like that. Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what's happening. People need to be compensated for their work. That's a fact. That's a fact in any industry. But yeah, my hope is that things are settled and don't go too long. I don't think they will.
Well, I mean,
I'm not worried about certain things. I just feel mostly, for all the filmmakers out there watching this, or artists or creators, you have a dream, you have a vision, a thing, you're going to find a way to make it happen. And there's going to be obstacles that always come in. And then there's going to be miracles that come into, one of the things for me, I'm like, I never thought on my first film I'd be working with Eric Roberts. So right there's the miracle. It's like, all right, now we have a couple of roadblocks. It's like, yeah, but I've had my big share of wins on this film as well. So I can't really be like,
can't complain.
I can't, I'm like, all right, we're going to figure out a way and things will resolve. And,
it's going to get there. It's going to get there.
Exactly.
Man. You're going to get there. You just have faith in it, and you're going to keep working, and it's going to get there, and we're going to get there sooner rather than later. I know it.
And what I've learned too is sometimes where you get like halted, it gives you a chance to look at other parts of the process. It's like, all right, if I can't work with actors for a little bit, what can I do on the film? And it's like, okay, I could start thinking about sound and post-production and color grading and these type of things that, like it or not, a lot of people say that the most important thing in a movie is actors, but I just disagree. I think that it's all of the elements together. That the tornado of every single department together is what makes a movie good. Because if you have a drab color grading and bad lighting and an actor's giving a great performance, you know what? It feels like it's a student film with someone talking in front of a white wall. And you know what? It doesn't feel like a good performance to me. It feels like a crap performance because I feel like I'm watching an actor, not a character. I'm not watching Jack Torrance. I'm watching
Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, I'm watching Jack Nicholson in someone's apartment.
Right.
And so to me, this time gives me a chance to really explore these other departments, the edit, the story, the score, these things that, why are Kubrick films still relevant? Or why is Darren Aronofsky Requiem for a Dream? Well, people still listen to those soundtracks, the 2001 Space Odyssey and those kind of things. I'm like, all right, how do I make my own version of that and create this hypnotic soundtrack that isn't like anyone else's, and yet it's universal and large? I mean, that's where I feel like, look at John Williams and Spielberg's collaboration. How many movies they made that people whatever. Jurassic Park. You just hear it and you're like, that's the movie. And so I'm kind of always thinking about that stuff as well, and not just like, actors are amazing, but they're only one part of the piece.
There's always so many of the people that I, check out that are always talking about being successful, always say, there's always something you can be doing.
Yeah,
Always something you can be doing.
And I just love the team collaboration coming from someone who, on my early films, I was doing my own sound. I was always editing. I was always, makeup. I learned how to do it all. And so I have just a tremendous respect for every single person on my film, and that every single role on the film to me is equal. And I don't look at this person is bigger than this person and this person's more important. I look at all of us as this symbiotic organism, and if we're all in sync, we're all going to make a film that we're all proud of, that we're all trying to find through. But if I'm favoring this over that, guess what? That movie is not going to work. I don't care how good this is or that performance is; it's not going to work. So
it's going to be unbalanced.
Yeah. So I'm a big believer in the collaboration and teamwork element, and I die by that. I die by the idea that story is king. That's kind of my motto. It's story, not actors are king, not cinematography is king, not music is king. And I don't want anything to triumph over anything else. I want you, the audience, to be following my cop character named Bandini, not my actor.
Right.
I don't want you to be watching Eric Roberts. I want you to be watching Walter Rockaby, the police psychologist in the scene. And so I want to make everything invisible. And so we're just watching characters and their problems. And that's my favorite films, is I don't even care who's acting in them. Even when they have great, legendary actors, I want them to blend in. And if I've done that job, then I've done my job, which is making sure, even me, I don't want you to say, oh, hey, Spyder, that's such great directing. How did you get? No. I want you to be like, that character so interesting. Like, what was that character's like trying to do in that scene? I'm like, watch it again. I want everything to be invisible, the actual hands behind the film. And so that you just watch the characters, the story, the setting, the town, and you're like, wow,
Give me a story. Give me a story. That's what
I'm like everyone else. Like, I go to the movies to watch great stories. And when people get nominated for best directing, I almost think that stuff should be disappeared. It should just be best movie, because it's like breaking apart a film when the goal is to make the film not be broken apart.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I don't want to keep you too long. Is there anything that we didn't get into that you want to address?
No, man. Just stay tuned. Hopefully we'll be dropping a trailer, and
cool.
And we have some more really exciting news with some cast members, and after all this stuff passes, we'll be announcing some of the things that happened a few months ago. Everything is funny is on such a slow trickle, of how it gets released. But yeah, man, just excited to eventually release this film, finish the film, and really try to make something that me as an audience member that I would want to see and be like, hey, I'm going to throw a tomato at the screen if there's an easy moment, or there's a stupid moment, or there's, something's trying to be something it's not. So I try to really put myself in those shoes as we shoot and edit and direct, is to make sure that the film is something that's original, chilling, and also has some of those great kind of feelings that a Christmas Eve horror film should have, without being tropey and not one iota of clichéness. I don't want to single that, but I also want the feeling of chilling Christmas Eve tale.
Sounds good to me. I really do hope that you get this thing, you get back to moving at full speed.
Yeah.
Just use the time, doing what you got to do.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's so great to hear your voice and chat. And
it's always good to talk, man. Yeah, I appreciate it.
I love what you do, man. You're a great voice on the cyberspace, man.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you. All right. My thanks to Spyder Dobrofsky. You can find him on Twitter. Is that correct? Where can people find you?
Twitter and Instagram. It's the same thing. It's Spyder Dobro. A lot of people call me Dobro. They call my dad Dobro, and then they ended up calling me Dobro as well. So it's just a moniker.
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
All right. We shall see you again down the road, man. Hopefully, once you get this going again, I'd love to have you back on to discuss 100%, the film.
100%. I'll be sure to watch Andor and finish Primal before I come back on.
And the bear. Get to the bear, man. The serious shit. All right. My thanks to Spyder, and we will see you in the next video. Spyder, stick around for a second, would you?
Yep.
All right. Have a good one, everybody. Enjoy the weekend.
See you guys.